Welcome to Sister Sessions, a podcast where two sisters on very different journeys explore what it means to live spiritually in today's world. My sister, Jenny Fairbank, is the co-founder and spiritual director of Wisdom Pathways, a yoga and meditation teacher, and a somatic healer devoted to guiding others toward inner peace. And I'm Susie Gustin, a mom of three, producer and owner of Red City Live Entertainment, embracing life's joys while searching for deeper meaning. Together, we have honest, relatable conversations about finding balance, purpose, and connection in everyday life. So settle in. You are exactly where you need to be. Welcome to Sister Sessions. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sister Sessions podcast. I am Susie Gustin, and I am here with my sister and co-host, Jenny Fairbank.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hi, Jenny. So today we're very excited. We are here with our special guest, who is also a very dear friend of Jenny's. So let me get into that. Our guest today is Nate Benson, the interim executive director of Texans for Greater Mental Health, a nonprofit focused on advancing innovative evidence-based mental health solutions through education, research, and public policy in Texas. Nate brings over 2 decades of experience in healthcare with a background in counseling and psychology and a deep commitment to community-driven change. He's especially passionate about expanding access to psychedelic-assisted therapies and helping shift the way we talk about mental health, not just in Texas, but everywhere. This is one of those conversations that feels both grounded and expansive at the same time, and we are so excited to dive in. So please help us welcome to the Sister Sessions podcast, Nate Benson.
Yeah, Nate.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Great
welcome.
intro. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, as always, I like to, whenever we have a special guest that's good friends with Jenny, I like to kind of get into how the two of you met and became friends.
Yeah. Well, the origin story of that is a psychedelic actual origin story. So, back in 2021, I set out to have a recreational experience with a friend of mine and psilocybin mushrooms. What I found in that experience was a deeper meaning that I was not anticipating having, setting out to have a recreational experience. And the next day, I told my wife about the experience. And at the end of the conversation, I told her, I'm going to work with mushrooms. And she said, with magic mushrooms? And I said, yes. I go, I don't know how, but I'm going to work with mushrooms. And I think the next thing I said, or maybe not the next thing, but very soon after that, was I need to talk to Jenny. I need to start seeing Jenny. So my wife had seen Jen for a couple of years, and I had met her, and but I knew at that point of time this idea of having a mystical experience. I needed more understanding about that. And what we talk about in psychedelics is integration, this idea of integration. And I had no idea what integration was, but I knew that I needed to talk to somebody. And why I'm such a huge advocate of integration is because I had Jen, and she's just been huge for me because I didn't know what this was. I had no idea about mystical states of consciousness. I knew nothing about what psychedelics could do from a psycho-spiritual standpoint. And so you need somebody that you can integrate all of that with. And so she was that person for me, and still is that person for me. So anyway, she's real special.
Wow. Yes, we know that on here for sure and everywhere. everyone feels her love and gets completely changed by it, of course. So Jenny, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking how grateful I am to be in Mindy, his wife, and Nate's life. Honestly, they are incredible human beings and so driven in all ways of life, like open-hearted and loving and just incredible people. in general, and then me being able to be a part of their life in the way of helping them evolve in any way that I can and guiding them in any way that I can is a true blessing and an honor. And watching Nate over these years evolve and transform his life into doing what he wants to do is so empowering and awe-inspiring. And I want everyone to hear his story because we can all live up to our potential and live the life that we really want, do the work that we really want to do if we trust ourselves, trust the universe, and put out the right energy. There's nothing the only thing that is holding us back is ourselves. And we need to realize that. And Nate has really taken steps that a lot of people would be too afraid to take.
Mm-hmm.
And he has 2 children. He has a family. He has been the breadwinner of his family for decades. And he has taken risks that are completely impressive and trusting himself. And I know it wasn't easy because I walked this journey with him in many ways. And to see him now where he is and what he's doing, it gives me full body chills. And I just want everyone to hear this story because Nate, you are an inspiration. And I adore you. You know that, you and Mindy and your family, your children and your mother and your, like I know extended family. And you walk the talk and you talk the walk, you do it. And that is not easy to find. And
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
How did your journey in healthcare and counseling begin?
Yeah, so my educational background is in mental health. I got my bachelor's in psychology from Nebraska Wesleyan University. It's a small liberal arts school in Lincoln, Nebraska. I grew up in Nebraska. So did Mindy. She was at the University of Nebraska for the first 2 years. But then I graduated with my degree in psychology and went and got my master's in counseling at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I had a short stint as a counselor and a case manager at a program at the Salvation Army called the Transitional Residential Program. So it was folks that were coming out of long-term hospitalizations or stints at regional centers, which used to be state hospitals, which used to be asylums, right? So they would come back, and the idea was that we were kind of a halfway house, but a halfway house for those that had mental illness, and then we would transition them back out into the community. I was very frustrated with how mental health care was. I called it this revolving door because before that job, I worked inpatient at a manual hospital in Omaha. And so what we'd see them get admitted, and then we would see them get balanced out on their meds. And then they might have to go do a stint in rehab, or they'd have to go do a stint at a regional center. And then we'd see them at the Salvation Army, and then we'd get them put back out in the community, and they're good. And then 6 months later, they're either off their meds, they've relapsed on whatever substance they're on, whatever their domestic circumstances were, and then they're right back in the hospital again. And then they're back right into the circle. And so it was not it was not a healthy environment to work in. Still is not a healthy environment to work in. And when I talk about that, I talk about kind of mainstream Western mental health care. And a friend of mine worked for Eli Lilly in their psych division. And so she was in Sioux City, Iowa at the time. And I went and I interviewed for 2 jobs. One was to sell psych meds, and the other one was to sell diabetes products. And I ended up getting hired by the diabetes director and spent 20 years selling diabetes products and walked away from mental health care completely. It was in 2021 that I had the mystical experience with the psilocybin mushrooms. And all of a sudden, my mindset was like, oh, I can go back to mental health care now because there's a solution. There's actual healing that's involved. versus just what is the masking of symptoms, the numbing of pain, when you're not actually getting to the core of what's actually going on. And that's what psychedelics do best, is they get to the core of what's actually happening and you can address it. So anyway,
Can
that
you
was my
get into that
part.
though? This is fascinating to me. I mean,
Yeah.
like really, I really want to understand what that means. Like you're saying that the psychedelic based treatment can actually really get to the problem, and how? What does it look like?
Yeah. So there's a variety. When I say psychedelics, I always talk about there's different levels. MDMA, I talk about as level one. It's not technically a psychedelic. It's an empathogen. It's a heart opener. You're very lucid during an MDMA experience. And then there's the next step up, which is psilocybin, LSD, and mescaline. So those are classic psychedelics. And then there's a tier 3, which I call the big 3, which are iboga, ayahuasca, and 5-MeO-DMT. And so iboga comes from a bush in Africa. Ayahuasca is the combination of 2 plants in South America. And 5-MeO-DMT actually comes from an excretion from the Sonoran desert toad. And so that is kind of the spectrum of what's going on in the psychedelic world. That's where all the research is, MDMA all the way up to 5-MeO-DMT. And all of them do better at certain things. So MDMA was the first one to ever be put up for FDA approval. A company called Lycos, formerly MAPS Public Benefit Corporation, tried to get FDA approval for MDMA for the treatment of PTSD. So what MDMA does is allows a person in a therapeutic environment to talk about really hard things to talk about, because their heart's open, their ego is diminished. And so it's really, really effective in therapeutic purposes, particularly for treating trauma. Um, and then you look up the next tier, right? So psilocybin is being looked at for treatment-resistant depression. So it's good for all types of depression, but from an FDA approval standpoint, they're going to say, oh, did they fail on SSRIs or something else first? Is this treatment resistant? Have they tried all of the traditional tools before that? But psilocybin is showing amazing results in treating depression. LSD is being looked at for anxiety. And then you look at the next tier, which is iboga, ayahuasca, and 5-MeO-DMT. And here in Texas, we just had the Texas Ibogaine Initiative that was signed by the governor back in June. And that is research into ibogaine, which is the active compound in iboga, which is a bush in Africa. And so iboga has been getting a lot of attention right now because it's really good at treating addiction. Not only addiction, but PTSD and traumatic brain injury. There's a great documentary right now on Netflix called In Waves and War, which follows these Navy SEALs who are suffering from PTSD and addiction and all of these things that come with having a post-traumatic stress diagnosis. And follows them as they go down to Mexico to get not only ibogaine treatment, but also they smoke 5-MeO-DMT. So that's also part of the protocol. So they are finding amazing relief from eating the root bark of a bush from Africa and smoking the excretion of a toad from the Sonoran Desert. And so I think that's really cool that these two
Wow.
from nature, right? One from two from separate continents, separated by an ocean, is giving relief to these people
Yeah.
that had never had any relief from anything else before.
And whenever this takes place, is it different in the fact, is there always a doctor, a professional present during the use of the psychedelics? Or is there like a prescription, like, okay, you take this so many times how does it look like in that respect? What does it look like in that respect?
Sure, and it's different for all of it. So when we talk about iboga and ibogaine, there is a doctor that needs to be present. So there can be heart issues with administration of ibogaine. So it can alter their QT prolongation. Not a doctor, but the QT prolongation is the concern, and so they have to have an EKG, and they need to make sure that they have taken a drug test, so they don't have any other things in their system that can, aggravate or interact with the ibogaine. And so, but that is the only one that is crucial, that you have a physician and medical staff available. Psilocybin is really safe. LSD is really safe in terms of, there's a lot of things you need to take into consideration for psychological safety, but in terms of actual physical safety,
Right.
these are administered very easily with what we call, but
That's
licensed counselor, or
mm-hmm.
something obviously that is an expertise in mental health care.
Yeah, so someone under the influence of one of these that is present with the professional, does the professional walk them through like a session, like have questions? Are they prompting them to pull out some of their trauma, or are they just allowing them to be in a safe space with someone there just in case?
Yeah. So in the terms of MDMA was MDMA assisted therapy. And so that was kind of the interesting component of trying to get approval, because you're not only approving a medicine, but you're also approving therapy. And so the FDA had never approved um, an assisted therapy protocol, right? And so, but in the case of psilocybin, for example, most patients are given an eye mask and headphones, and they're listening to a playlist, and they are, you know, laying on their mat the majority of the time. They might need some emotional support, someone to be there to, tell them it's going to be okay, hold their hand, but then the whole idea is to get them to go back inward, back into their experience. And so, with the exception of MDMA, the majority of the other psychedelics, it's you just need facilitators there to support them in the process,
Mm-hmm.
and to give them what we call set and setting. And so, there's two or four terms when you talk about psychedelics. It's preparation, integration, and set and setting. So preparation is what you do prior to the experience. And so that's working with somebody like Jen to get into the right mindset. That's what the set is, to make sure that you go into it with an open mind, and you're ready for it, and you know what to expect. And then the setting is where you do it and who you do it with. So the setting is, want to be obviously a safe container, and with facilitators that know what they're doing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
when you have the right mindset and you have the right setting you're doing it at, the experience, you're going to have a better experience when those things are in place. And then the last thing is integration. So that's what you do after you've had the psychedelic experience. And that seems to be the most crucial thing. I've heard it said before, it's 10% medicine, 90% integration. It's what do you do? You're given this window of opportunity where you've learned something new, and what are you going to do? What Jen talked about, doing the work. It's
Mm-hmm.
work. Yeah, go
What is
ahead.
the expectation in terms of the actual medicine? Is the expectation that it's like a one and done? Like, okay, you do it once and then you do the work afterwards, or you might have to do this multiple times.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would never say one and done. But the thing is, it's like these are non-habit forming. So you may do, for me, it was 3 or 4 months before I ever did another psilocybin experience. And example of ibogaine, the people that are going to do ibogaine right now, some of them are just doing it one time, but others are going back. But it's 1, 2, 3 years later before they go back again. And they talk about kind of the layers of the onion, right? Like that first one, peeled off that first layer of the onion, but then to go back and do additional sessions, each layer you get down, and eventually you find the core, right, of who you are. And once you get to a point, sometimes the medicine, it tells you, it's like, yeah, it's you're good. You don't have to do this anymore, and you kind of know when to stop. But it's not one and done. For some people it is, but for most people, example, for the MDMA assisted therapy trials, it was 3 sessions that they did with the MDMA. But when you look at the ibogaine trials, I mean, they're going to do ibogaine one time and having amazing results. Different medicines have different results. Ibogaine seems to be a very powerful medicine when it comes to this class of psychedelics that we're talking about.
Yeah. Would you say that becomes a spiritual experience, and that is part of why there's healing in this way? Does spirituality play a big role in this, or does it not connected? Is that not what you would give the credit to?
Well, it's interesting because we talk about all of these wonderful things that they do. They get rid of depression, and they get rid of PTSD and addiction. And but if you look at where all of these things came from, I mentioned, for example, iboga comes from a bush in Africa, and it is used by a group of people called the Bawidi in Gabon, and they use it for spirituality and divination, right? That's the purpose. Of course, it's used in healing and treating all sorts of things, but it's used sacramentally in a ceremonial for ceremonial purposes. You take the same thing with psilocybin mushrooms. Historically, psilocybin mushrooms have been used by the Mazatecs in Mexico, and they use it for the exact same thing. They use it for healing and divination. Ayahuasca, same thing, right? It's the Shipibo tribes in South America use it for healing and divination. So we are creating clinical trials because that's what we do in our Western society, is that we are looking at said drug for said indication so you can get approval to use it, versus what other people have been doing, indigenous people have been doing for thousands of years, maybe even longer, and that is using nature for healing and divination. So I would say clinically, they do wonderful things, and we need to continue to do research. At Texans for Greater Mental Health, we talk about science-backed, research-based, and that's crucial. But the foundation of all of this stuff is a plant from nature, and that's just a plant or a fungi from nature until somebody consumes it. And the people that first consumed it have been using it for thousands of years for sacramental use. So, yeah, historically, yes, it's undeniable that these things have spiritual properties because that's what they've been used for thousands of years.
Yeah. Jenny, I have a quick question to you. Do you have many clients who ask you about the use of psychedelics for healing? Like, is there stigma around it where people are like, hey, I really want to know more about that?
I wouldn't say that I have a lot of people that talk about it. But I do work with people, and Nate has actually referred me to some people who I work with before and after, with the getting them ready and getting them in the space and the mindset and setting intention and understanding what is going to happen for them. And then on the back end, integration, which I agree with Nate. It's very, very important. What are you going to do with all this now that you had this experience? Dive in and really do the work that you need to continue your healing journey. This isn't a magic pill that's going to set you completely free of your, your journey with your karma and your life and your soul's growth. It is a step in that direction and can open up your understanding of really what is out there. It's like a peek through the veil. And I want to hear, I love all this background information that's so vital, Nate, and I love to hear your knowledge and how much you've gained in your wisdom around this. Would you be open to sharing a little bit about your experience, especially I even think maybe the first experience that you had where you were like, okay, wait, there's something else here. If you would dive in a little bit, if you're okay with that, share whatever feels comfortable for you. But I think the listeners need to hear your direct experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take you back to the day. It was Friday, June 25th, 2021. And I had consumed mushrooms one other time in my life, and it was in college. We did everything wrong. We did not know about preparation and setting, and we ate way too much. And I ended up having a very bad experience. And so fast forward to 2020, it was literally 20 years later. And a buddy of mine approached me and he said, have you ever eaten mushrooms before? And I said, yes, I had a horrible experience, but I know if I did it, I'd do it right the next time. And so anyway, it was on that date that we decided to do it. And uh, had read on the internet that 2 to 3 grams was like a moderate dose, which we did and proceeded to have like a very enjoyable time. But I felt compelled after a couple of hours to go eat more. That's the only word that I can describe. Like I had to go eat more. So I went back and consumed a considerable amount more than I had eaten previously. And about an hour after that, I felt compelled again to go outside. And I was at a friend's house, and he had this kind of wall on the back of his pool. There was a full moon, and I was staring at the full moon, and I started to feel this pressure in the back of my head, and I thought I was having a brain aneurysm. It literally felt like a balloon was blowing up in the back of my head, and I actually grabbed the back of my head, and when I grabbed the back of my head, it popped. And when it popped, I had what they describe as a mystical experience. It was an interconnectedness of all things. There was no separation between me and everything. And I had another thought, and that thought was that you're going to wake up tomorrow morning a different person. And I did. I literally woke up the next day a totally different person. I used to say I was atheist on a bad day and an agnostic on a good day. And it opened my mind to a world and a dimension that I had no idea existed. And it made it very real for me. It made it extremely real for me. And yeah, it was a journey that I had been on that I didn't know that was going to be the destination, but that ended up being what I was looking for this whole time.
And that popping was that, would you say that was your pineal gland? Pineal gland?
That has been my deduction based on everything. I got consumed with that, like what that feeling was. And yeah, that is the exact location of my pineal gland, which they say is the third eye. That is the biological spot of the third eye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the mystical experience and as I like to, kind of seeing beyond the veil, seeing through the veil and like feeling that oneness. And from that moment on, you never looked back. Like you never had a second doubt at least from what I know of you, and I mean, unless if there's something I don't know, but like from what I understand, you have not looked back and you dove in. And I want to talk about that a little bit, if that's okay. Like what did this look like moving forward for you? I mean, I know, but I want listeners to hear.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that week after, one of the first things I did, I texted you and made a first appointment with you. And then I Googled, books on psychedelics, and How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan was the one that popped up to the very top of the list. And that's what I would recommend for anybody. It's the most comprehensive kind of view. It gives the history of psychedelics and then kind of what modern application is. And then he actually goes and has these experiences and talks about his experiences as well. And then from then it was like, I'm not exaggerating. Everything that I listened to was a book on psychedelics or a podcast on psychedelics. And yeah, I became obsessed. It was, I'm like, oh, I found what I want to do when I grow up, and that's really what it felt like. And but I stayed in my corporate gig because that paid the bills, and there weren't, there's not really jobs, in this space unless you create it or you work in research. And so for 4 years, I was on the lookout and building relationships. We end up producing a fundraising video for the for the McGill Center for Psychedelic Research and Therapy here at the University of Texas at Austin. And I met a gal named Gabby Poehler, and Gabby's husband, Aaron, started a men's group called Next Calling. And in that men's group, it was everybody there was affected positively by a psychedelic experience. And at that first meeting, I met a guy named Logan Davidson. And Logan ended up being the executive director of this new organization called Texans for Greater Mental Health. And so Logan was a chief of staff for Alex Dominguez back in 2021, and they passed a psilocybin bill, House Bill 1802, which was the first public money for psychedelic research since the passage of the Controlled Substances Act. So the state of Texas was the first ones to actually pass a psychedelic bill that actually used state money to fund it. And it's a psilocybin study for PTSD. It's going on right now at the Baylor College of Medicine. And so he had already established himself as passing a piece of legislation. So Eric Kozendar, our founder, when he was looking for someone to start this organization, Logan was the perfect fit. And so Logan has been the executive director since the very beginning. But this past year, we had a different legislative agenda going into 2025. And then a guy named Brian Hubbard came to town with the Texas Ibogaine Initiative. So Brian was in Kentucky. They had tried to get the Kentucky Ibogaine Initiative passed there. It had failed. And then they came to Texas with support of Governor Rick Perry. And Governor Perry and Brian did the Joe Rogan podcast at the end of December of 2024. And then all of a sudden, the legislative agenda of Texans for Greater Mental Health became about the Texas Ibogaine Initiative. And right during that period of time, and Jen knows this, I was very unhappy with my current job. And I got laid off on Friday the 13th, December 13th, right before Christmas. But I had written in my journal the day before that that I desired to work in psychedelics, and that was my. I mean, I just wrote it, and that was on December 12th, and on December 13th, I got laid off. And I took that as an obvious sign that I should pursue what I actually want to do. And like I said, what I want to do when I grow up. And so I started having conversations with Logan. And then Logan brought me on as development director in March as the Ibogaine Initiative started to catch some steam. And then the governor ended up signing the bill in June. after a tremendous effort from us at Texans for Greater Mental Health, but also Brian Hubbard, Rick Perry. We had amazing testimony from grant recipients from Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. And so it was a real team effort to get this passed. We had bipartisan support in the House and the Senate, and governor was in support, lieutenant governor was in support. And we got a public bill signing in June, and off to the races. So now Texas is the ibogaine research capital of the world. So we are,
Wow.
yeah,
How
pretty
how do
cool.
you personally go ahead, Jenny? Jenny's got a question she is excited to ask.
Well, it's not even a question as much as like I want to confirm everyone to hear that Nate, it wasn't just this one, journal entry on the 12th that made this happen. You have been manifesting this and putting this energy out into the universe for years. And seeing this, like we remember the bridge, and like I'm gonna get over there. Like I know this is what I'm meant to do. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I know I can do this. Like you put so much of your, energy is the word, but like your passion into it. And I, passion is purpose. It's a very big part of our soul saying yes, yes, yes. And when you have that kind of passion and that kind of focus, which you did, all the consumption of the books and the podcasts and the diving in and the focus of this is what I'm meant to do and I know it. And then it then eventually flips over and like, yes, here it is. And it was the perfect timing, the perfect thing. And you really wanted to get out of this corporate life, but you're a very responsible person. You have children, you have responsibility, and yet you trusted so much. And when that opportunity came, it was just like, it seemed so easy, but you put all this energy that moved you to where you needed to be. So I just want people to hear that anything and everything is possible. It is not giving up, staying the course, staying focused, trusting that if you are meant to do something, it will come.
And psychedelic assisted therapy is, I can imagine, very controversial. And how do you personally approach controversy around it?
Yeah, I think there's stigma around
Yeah.
it, but the stigma is there's not as much. When you can go on Netflix and you can watch Fantastic Fungi and they highlight psilocybin mushrooms, and you can go watch the documentary I mentioned in Waves and War, where they talk about ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT. And you can go watch Michael Pollan's documentary series about how to change your mind as well. And they highlight mescaline, MDMA, LSD, and psilocybin, I believe. There's a 4-part series on that. So, you can go on Netflix and learn about psychedelics now. And you see news stories all the time about psychedelics. We have the McGill Center for Psychedelic and Research and Therapy here now at the University of Texas at Austin, Dell Medical School. It's a mouthful, but I mean, we have a psychedelic research center here at the University of Texas. And so there's a lot of credibility that comes with that. And Governor Rick Perry is very supportive. And so it's a bipartisan thing too now, where our veterans and the help that they found have really led the way and made this really bipartisan issue. And it's one of the few things that we all agree on right now. So the stigma is still there, but it's changing, in particular in Texas and the Texas legislature. I mean, we won with overwhelming support in both the House and the Senate. So there's support. It's changing.
Yeah. Is there a talk about, or like a restriction for I mean, I have no idea. So I'm just asking, is like 21 and over is who you focus on? Does it someone that's 18, 16? What's the age? Is there a limitation there?
Yeah, this conversation came up. We had an engagement event in Fort Worth a couple weeks ago, and there was a pediatric psychiatrist there that was asking about pediatric use. And the one reference that they did make to pediatric use was adolescents with eating disorders. So there is some research going on with anorexia and bulimia. But I heard another talk on Friday. It's like, brains are developing, so we're not sure. But as we do research, they're going to look at adults first. They're going to look at 18 and over for most folks. But yeah, I mean, the current available treatments, when they think about putting teenagers on SSRIs and Adderall, you have to weigh, the risk benefit. And so I think we're eventually going to get there, but all of the research currently is in adults. The exception that I knew that a physician brought up, I don't know the exact reference, but they did talk about adolescent use for treatment of eating disorders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, my question just left my brain here when I was just going to ask you about that. Oh, I know what it is, because I am very unfamiliar with being under the influence of any of what you're talking about. So just in curiosity, is it something that whenever they're experiencing it, they're in such euphoria that there's a fear that they're going to then become addicted to it? Or are some of these experiences rough, like a healing, and it's not easy? Does it kind of get ugly?
Good question.
But then they come out of it and feel
Yeah,
some kind of sense of relief.
that's right. It's very hard to make an argument that these are habit forming or addictive, because once you've had a big psychedelic experience, you don't want to have one for a while. And so, uh, yeah, so there's a good, what you were asking is like if um like for adolescents that have these big experiences, or you just personally, like,
No, just in
they're
general.
worried.
Just in general. Is it something that professionals have to like talk to people and say, "Hey, this is not for constant use," or is it just kind of a given because when they take it, like you said, there's no desire to then jump back into it again, like some street drugs?
Right. Yeah, typically, I mean, you don't have to, I mean, you want to have that conversation. MDMA, particularly, there is, some recreational use with MDMA. But if you're doing this in a controlled environment, you're doing it in a research environment, you're doing it with a licensed facilitator, you're going to a retreat center in Mexico to do this. Those are all things that they're going to have a conversation with you about, but like, you're just going to do it there. So everybody that we're talking to is doing it in an organized way and not just writing a prescription and saying, here you go. So the opportunities to
Right.
do these are doing it at the research institution, doing it at the retreat center. And so it isn't like writing a prescription or getting a drug off of the street. This is all being done with what we talked about: preparation, integration, set and setting. And so, yeah, they're not doing it and then, hey, here's some to take home with you. Um,
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
so that's not what's going. Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important to discuss. If someone's listening to this and saying, "Oh, I'd like to, try that because I know I have an addiction I'm wanting to get rid of, or I have some PTSD that I'm dealing with, or I want to have a spiritual experience because really I don't believe that there is anything outside of this 3D world." How do I get to that? What do I do? How do someone find these resources? I know they're growing, but they're not everywhere.
That's right. And I have to go back to my experience, and I say I had a recreational experience, right? So yes, there is recreational use. I don't recommend it. If someone is looking to have a first experience, don't do it like I did it. I got lucky and had a very positive experience. If you try to do this on your own and you don't have the right support, again, the preparation, integration, set and setting, you can have a bad experience like I had in college. Like, so I had a bad experience and a good experience. But if you have the right support around you, then that's when you're going to have the most positive experience. So what's available to people, there's research that's going on. I referenced the McGill Center here at the University of Texas, Baylor College of Medicine. But again, these are for specific people for specific indications. And then the ibogaine centers that I reference are in Mexico. So there's several that are in Mexico. And so that's where people are going now to get ibogaine treatment. And so legally, that's it, right? You can get into a research a trial, or you have to go abroad to do it. So if you do it recreationally here, if you do it underground here, those are all illegal. The other thing that is available in the United States are entheogenic churches. Just like the Native American church is able to use peyote as a sacrament, it's believed to be our First Amendment right to be able to practice religion as we see it, and that includes the use of psychedelic sacrament. So there are many entheogenic churches that are operating within the United States, not only Native American churches, but also ayahuasca churches, and then multi-sacramental churches as well. So they are operating in the United States operationally as a church. So that is the other things that are out there right now.
How does one find that?
Yeah.
You hold somebody, don't you?
I know. Yeah. I'm like, I know people, of course, but I can't advertise these things.
No.
But these are things that are having open discussions with. I went and saw a roundtable discussion last Friday with a guy, Joe Tafur, and Joe is very open that he has a church. It's an ayahuasca church. It's the Church of the Eagle and the Condor. And he wrote a book called The Fellowship of the River. Do you know about Joe?
I don't.
Jenny, you would dig Joe a lot. So anyway, he's a medical doctor, but then he also studied in Peru and is an ayahuasquero. And so he's an MD and ayahuasquero, and he has this church. And so he's very open about that. He also does ketamine assisted therapy, which you asked if doctors are needed. So there is ketamine. And so a lot of doctors are involved in ketamine assisted therapy. Anyway, that's a totally different discussion. But anyway, yeah, he has a church, and so they serve ayahuasca at his church, and that's how they use it. And so that's also out there, and there are people that are public about it, and there's people that aren't public about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going back to when you were talking about, they're researching that this is possibly helping people with the eating disorder. How? Like, what experience are they going through that could actually help them through? I think it's fascinating. I'm just trying to get in there and figure that out. Like, what are they experiencing that then could help them not have the mentality of the disorder with them?
Yeah. It varies with everybody. I'll go back to when research started back at Johns Hopkins back in the early 2000s. The very first trial, this guy Roland Griffiths, he has a great TED Talk about the mystical experience. So Roland is like the mystical experience guy. So he was a researcher on psychoactive substances for a really long time, and then took on psilocybin as his research project. And the very first study they did wasn't on trauma, it wasn't on depression, it wasn't on anxiety. It was, can psilocybin occasion a mystical experience? Because what Roland believed, and he had a deep meditation practice that got him interested in this. Interesting enough, he did not use psychedelics until much, much later. He died a couple of years ago. But it was his meditation practice that convinced him of the mystical experience. And they created a mystical experience questionnaire. And it's not only for psychedelic experiences, but it's for people that are meditators. There's people that have experiences in yoga. There's people that have experiences doing breath work, cold plunging. There's people that have mystical experiences in a lot of different ways. Psychedelics just happen to be a very effective, and it's the the bullet train to the psychedelic experience or the mystical experience. And so that was his explanation of, and I default to Roland, and I always reference people to that, is that because the higher they scored on the mystical experience, so the more mystical their experience, then the better off that they did. So if they were doing a smoking cessation study, the people that scored really high, even though it sounds subjective, right, and it is, they did better, right? The longer they abstained from smoking. And so there is something to that at the core of the experience. The other thing that it does, and ibogaine, everybody will report, not everybody, but a lot of people report this slideshow that happens. It's a life review that happens. And so psychedelics have a way of showing you what's bad for you. Some people will see, a pack of cigarettes turn into a skull and crossbones, and and they know all of a sudden it clicks with them that smoking's bad for me, and I should never do that again. So it has a way of showing you things that need to change in your life, and might be the source of why you feel the way you feel. So
wow,
Beautifully
that is so
said, Nate.
fascinating to me.
And it's
Thank you.
beautiful. Yeah, it's beautifully said.
Roland does a TED Talk. He does one. There's a one that he did in like 2012 and one he did in 2016. It's the later one that he did. And I just recommend that because he talks about this, the bridge between science and spirituality. So he's a very serious scientist, but he's also a very serious meditator, right? And he does not believe that they need to be mutually exclusive, and that these things can coexist. And I think it's obviously where they started. Like I said, the tribes have been using these things for thousands of years. That's where it started. So it's where it's headed.
Every experience is so unique. And, when you mentioned earlier, Susie, you asked the question about like, does everybody have a spiritual experience, or, could it be that addiction, or does people, to it, or do people sometimes have a difficult experience? And yes, some people do have a difficult experience because there's a lot that comes up for them, and it's very challenging to see what's going on inside of yourself. And then having to integrate that can take a long period of time. So that's again why Nate emphasizes the integration part of it, because it can be so overwhelming and confusing and exhilarating, and all of these wrapped in one. And what do I do with all of this? Now I have to live my daily life.
Yeah.
That's difficult for people, I can imagine. And
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, I want you to go, because then I wanted to say something completely different. Go ahead.
No, it changes your perspective greatly. And so when your perspective is changed, your world changes. And so your perspective is your reality. And so you go back to reality and it's not the same. It's not what you remember. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But things are going to change. And that's the reason why people pursue these experiences, right? I'm an opioid addict, and things need to change. So it's good, but it's not easy, and it takes work for sure.
Yes. I would like to know what you see as the future. Like, how do you see this evolving? What is your, like, if you could wave a magic wand and have this be your ideal, what would this look like?
Yeah, how do you see it evolving?
Yeah, there's there's the short term and the long term, right? And when Joe was talking last week, Joe Defer, and he got asked that question of like, how's this going to grow? And he gave the perfect answer, and he said, this is a movement from nature, and so it's going to grow as like a tree. So if you think of that, like, as much as I want this to happen now, like I want it to happen right now, um, it's a sapling right now, and but it's being well watered, and it's being well fed, and it's getting plenty of sunshine, and so this sapling is going to grow faster than we think. That's what I think. I think the momentum is on our side, and there is so much excitement, and there's so much need, there's so much pain that is out there right now, and so many people that have lost hope that there's anything that can help them. And our suicide rate in this country, and our despair, and level of addiction that we have, the level of loneliness that we have, and this is something that offers people hope. And I think once we hit a critical mass of folks that have had these experiences and start telling their stories, and then everybody knows about it, that's
Yeah.
that's it. The mycelial network that happens. And so it's going to grow like a tree, but it's going to grow fast. So
Yeah, Nate, I was going to ask
that's how
you,
I see it.
do patients play big advocates in the movement?
Yeah, I mean, that's who's obviously driving it, right? I mean, when you
Mm-hmm.
look at, I mentioned in Waves and War, it was these Navy SEALs that had come back, and the VA had put them on a laundry list of medicines, and they tried all these different modalities, and nothing worked. They're the ones that finally were like, we need to go down and try something different. And so that's it. It's a supply and demand issue. And once enough people are demanding this, and I think that's where we're going to get to. I think there's going to be people that are suffering that are going to demand it. And that's what we're seeing at the states. Since we passed the I Begin initiative in Texas, they passed a bill in Mississippi. They just passed a bill in West Virginia. They just filed a bill in Oklahoma. And so there's all of these states, and that's just Ibogaine. There's all sorts of stuff going on at the state level with psilocybin in Colorado, Oregon, New Mexico. New Jersey just passed a psilocybin law. And so it's happening everywhere. And so that's the thing that I think the demand is going to come from people that need the help, and they don't want to
Yeah.
have to go. They want to be able to do it here. They want to do it legally. They want to do it safely. They want to do it, surrounded, uh, in their home country. That makes sense.
So speaking of the set and the setting, is there any type of recommendation that, that you're with a group of friends, or you're just with a healthcare professional, or does a couple ever do it together, or two friends do it together, or specific groups? Is it better if you know everyone, or if you don't know anyone? Is there any type of anything to who you're with who's actually also getting under the influence?
Well, yeah, when we talk about doing it in a ceremonial experience, yeah, who like who, if the people, you want to feel safe, right? Like that's a big part of the set and setting, is feeling safe. And so when you're with people that you know and trust, and have done it before, right? Have facilitated ceremonies before. That makes a big difference. And so, yeah, that's why, it doesn't make logistical sense to have to get on an airplane, fly to a foreign country. You're going to do it with a group of strangers. You're going to bond with them for a few days, but then you're going to go back to your daily lives, and be able to do this, regionally, and be able to do it locally, where you're able to do it with people, not only, in your
Is there,
community or they.
yeah, is there interaction between people when they're doing it, or does it really just become super internal and those people are just in the area having their own internal experience as well, but no interaction?
Yeah, I mean, so groups usually happen, like when you go to retreats out of the country. A lot of the facilitation that's happening in the research environment is just one-on-one, or one with two therapists, and so there isn't a lot of use of groups from the research standpoint in the United States. But yes, when you go abroad to do these retreats, they're done in groups. But no, there's not a lot of interaction between people, especially with ibogaine. With ayahuasca is very communal, and so there's definitely more interaction with ayahuasca. But typically, like in a group, like a psilocybin sitting with a group, or a ibogaine sitting, it's very introspective and not a lot going on. So the only one that it would be more interactive is ayahuasca, but yeah.
Hmm.
So it can be used in a group, and it can be used individually. And so anyway, it's definitely more economical, and looking at group therapy is a really good option, because that's a thing. If you do one-on-one, the price goes up. If you're able to do a group environment, you're able to bring the price down. You're also able to serve more people than just doing one-off. And so there's a lot of benefit to doing it in the group. And I would say the preparation and integration for groups is really great, right? So you're going through this experience together. So being able to talk before you do the experience, and then be able to talk after you do the experience. But in the experience itself, there's not a lot of interaction going on. But it's really cool to have a group of people that you're going into this experience with, and you come out of this experience with, and be able to share your story. So that's where the benefit of the group really comes in, versus actually in the ceremony itself.
And is it usually like in nature? Take place like outside in nature? Is that the best way to do
Um,
it?
Again, different situations. Yeah, here in the United States, in the research environment, yeah, they're not going to. But if you go on a retreat and you're doing ayahuasca in Peru, yeah, you might be outside in nature. But a lot of times it's in a controlled environment that that they're doing these things in. I know 5-MeO DMT, when people smoke 5-MeO, a lot of times they will do that outdoors. But yeah, typically when you're in a long duration, like psilocybin could be 6 to 8 hours, or, with the case of iboga, it's like 14 to 24 hours for people that they're in this experience. So they're going to be in a comfortable, climate controlled environment for those experiences. So yeah, it really depends on the medicine, and yeah, and your setting where you go to do it.
Wow.
Hmm.
How often are you in that environment and experiencing others going through it?
Yeah, I volunteer. I have a buddy, we mentioned a church. I have a buddy, Justin Lepre, who I volunteered at his church, Illuminating Co. I volunteered at a couple of his psilocybin retreats, and then I volunteered at his very first ayahuasca retreat. And then I sat with ayahuasca in September. So that was the first time that I had sat with ayahuasca. And so, that's it, interesting, because I was always wanted to do ayahuasca, and the fact that I was able to do it in the United States was something that I didn't think was going to be possible. But I did it in the context of a church. And so therefore, that's how I was able to do it. So, but I felt, I love that environment. It's, when you see people in a retreat environment, they're healing together, right? And so you show up to kind of, fight your demons together, and it's cool. It's what I feel like, we did as our ancestors, when we came together in times of pain, in times of suffering, in times of healing, to raise each other up and to work with one another and to heal together. So that, to me, is the coolest thing about it, is that it's feels just natural that this is the way that we're supposed to do it.
And do you think anyone would benefit from this? Like if there was someone that was like, I'm not dealing with trauma. This sounds really interesting to me. But I'm not going through anything. Would it be beneficial to that person?
Yeah, I mean, it's we always, the people that are getting the treatment now, right, are people that have addiction issues or mental health issues. But eventually, the goal is so this is available for everybody. So not only people that have a certain diagnosis, but someone who, is looking to, explore their own consciousness. Is a right as well. And so not only do we have a right to explore these things for health reasons, but we should have the right to be able to explore our own consciousness as well. So that is certainly where I would like it to go, is that it's available for anybody that feels in their heart called to do it. I'm not going to say it's for everybody, because it might not be for everybody. But I do think that there are a lot of people that could benefit, would benefit. And yeah, I think it should be available for everybody.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What is
Oh, Nate,
something?
listening to you be so professional about this. You have really stepped into your expertise on all of this, and I am loving it.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Personally.
I mean, I don't know where you came from like Jenny does in terms of this, but I do definitely know that you know your stuff. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Yeah. It's I wake up in the morning and this is what I think about. So,
Wow. I just, on a slightly different note, I do also, I love when seeing anybody live out their passion. It just makes me so happy. And it's just, there's a certain aura about someone like that you can see that they're living out their passion. You can see that in you. It's very cool. Very cool.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's who I want to be when I grow up, you know?
I love that. And what is something, like, if there was one thing that you would want, and you don't have to make it one thing, anything that you really want our listeners to take from all of this? What is something that you want them to take from all this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted people to know this exists. I told Jenny about this before, that I had a ceremony, a psilocybin ceremony, where I determined my purpose. It was a couple of years ago on New Year's Eve, and my purpose was obvious. It was, I'm supposed to be a good dad, I'm supposed to be a good husband, and I'm supposed to tell people about how psychedelics can change the world. And that's been my mantra. Like I said, when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, what do I got to do for my wife? What do I got to do for kids? And how do we tell more people about psychedelics so we can change the world? And I know that sounds, like it's an exaggeration, but I think it's our only hope. I really do believe that. I think we are at a turning point where we need something to shift our consciousness in a way that only psychedelics can do. And everyone that I know that have had these experiences have always change their lives for the better. And so that's what we need. We need more people on board. We need your support. Spread the word. And if you're someone who has had these experiences and had positive experiences, continue to share your story. We need more people sharing their stories, and also making sure that we do this the right way, that we do it safely, and that we do it with the highest moral standard. I think that is the key thing, is like we need to be looking at this from how do we do it, not from the most profitable way, but the most efficient way. We need to be thinking about how do we do this the most moral way possible, and how do we uphold that high moral standard to make sure that this is delivered with the absolute best care that we can possibly deliver, and that there are people out there that have been waiting for this. There are doctors that are sick of having to just write prescriptions all day. They want to go. They want to come do this work. There are people that are social workers and counselors that are fed up with the current system, that want to come do this work. And so that's the other thing too, is that we need to change the system. We need to make traditional rehab centers that it's 11% success rate. We need to introduce, instead of 30, 60, 90-day drug and alcohol rehab programs, you need to introduce ibogaine or psilocybin into those programs, because the infrastructure already exists. The people that are passionate and helpers and caregivers are already there. They just want a tool that can make it happen. And that's what I believe psychedelics is. It's the tool to absolutely change mental health care and addiction care, and ultimately much broader than that as we explore consciousness. And I think that's something that all sorts of people are craving as well. So that's the next thing after that is, all right, let's get people well. And then how do we explore consciousness after that?
Yeah. What ethical considerations are involved in this space?
Yeah, I mean, you want to make sure that it's safe, obviously, from a physical standpoint, but then also to make sure that you have a supportive environment. Like, we don't want any uh, type of um, violations of anybody in any way. And so we need to make sure that we have plenty of staff on board, like you make sure that, the people that you have are also well trained, also have the resources available as well. So we're not doing these things hodgepodge. So, we need resources, people, and then we need like a standard of care. And I know there's some people working on that, because in healthcare, right, we have standards of care, but that's not put into place. And we really need to have a standard of care to make sure that, just like when you go into a clinic, or any other type of environment, that that they have policies in place to keep people safe. And but it's really making sure that the right people are involved. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't answer that all that well, but
Oh no, that was
Yes, you
actually
did.
good. Yeah, that was right on. Because I had no idea
Perfect.
where you were going to take it, and it makes sense. Yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, I've never heard it talked about in such a professional and well-educated from that standpoint before. So this has been extremely educational. And I'm sure our listeners are thinking the same thing. I mean, I'm intrigued.
Healing the world. No one needs to suffer in that way, I feel, in terms of addiction and PTSD and all of these things. And as Nate has been talking about, our current system is not working for us at all. And people are suffering greatly, and they don't need to be. And there is a solution. And these are natural from the earth. They are not, made in a chemical way in labs, and, the pharmaceuticals and all of that. It's very different. So
Does marijuana play any role in what you're advocating?
No, yeah, we do not do anything with cannabis. We're just a psychedelic organization. So, yeah, there's other groups that support cannabis, and so we just focus just simply on the psychedelic space.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. I feel
Yeah.
a little called for rapid fire questions though.
All right.
So the
Let's do
fake
it.
music comes on. Nate, there's music playing before we do it. You just can't hear it. It's in your head. Woo, woo. Rapid fire questions for Nate. Here we go. Coffee or tea?
Tea. I have tea right here.
Perfect. And please elaborate on your answers. You don't have to just.
I loved coffee. And I don't know, it's probably like 5 or 6 years ago. It upsets my stomach. Like I have coffee and it upsets my stomach. I can have a cup of coffee a little later in the day, but like coffee in the morning, um, it upsets my stomach. And so I miss coffee, but to be honest, like I like tea better now. And I just wanted something warm. I think it's healthier for me too.
Yeah. I would
Tea.
say probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Morning person or night owl?
A morning. Yeah. I'd like to be in bed by 9:30 if I can. And then up early. Like I like to be up by 5:36.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I think Jenny is too. Yep. Okay. One word that describes mental health today.
Broken. Yeah. Mental health care. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Broken.
A book that changed how you think.
The Immortality Key. The Immortality Key is a book by Brian Murarescu. So, oh boy, this is a fun conversation. So there was a book called The Road to Eleusis that was published in 1979. And it's a guy, Carl Ruck, who was a classicist, and then R. Gordon Wasson, who was a journalist. And he was the first guy to travel to Mexico and do magic mushrooms in Oaxaca, Mexico. And then he wrote an article about it in Life magazine. So he was the other author, and the other author on it was Albert Hofmann. And Albert was the first guy to synthesize LSD, and then he also synthesized psilocybin from psilocybin mushrooms. But Albert Hofmann famously accidentally did a mushroom trip. An LSD trip. So he synthesized it, got a little bit on his finger, and then decided to take it on his face. So we celebrate Bicycle Day on April 19th because he had to ride his bicycle home on a lot of LSD. So anyway, those three guys wrote a book called The Road to Eleusis. So in Eleusis, Greece, from like 300 BC, or no, longer than that, it was like 2,000 years that Eleusis existed. And at Eleusis, they would travel there. It was outside of Athens, and they would travel and they would drink this potion called the kokion. And so the kokion had 3 ingredients: barley, mint, and water. And lots of people went there. Aristotle and Cicero and Marcus Aurelius all traveled to Eleusis to drink this potion and to have these mystical type experiences. And so back in 1979, they theorized that this drink that they were making was an LSD potion. So ergot was where LSD comes from. And so Albert Hofmann knew that because he had synthesized LSD from ergot, which is a fungus. And so they believe that because ergot grows on grain, that they had barley as the ingredient. And so it was ergotized barley that they had, and they had figured out the right combinations, because you can get ergot poisoning from making beer with ergotized barley. But they found the right amount that you could have these LSD-like experiences. So Brian Murescu wrote a follow-up book on that. And then he actually went to get archaeological evidence of use of like first century Christians using these psychedelic substances. So he makes a tie into the Kokion of Eleusis and the sacrament of Jesus Christ, and then actually finds two examples of in Iberia and Spain where they found archaeological evidence, and then also a spot in Italy. So there's a lot of use. There's a Kokion in Greece. You can look it up, the Eleusinian Mysteries. They also had a sacrament in Zoroastrianism called Hyoma, and then in Vedic texts, and you'll find Soma in early Hindu cultures. And so the whole idea is that not only were these substances used by these, indigenous, quote unquote, primitive cultures, but that the Greeks had a psychedelic substance, and that the Persians had a psychedelic, and that the Hindu and Vedic cultures had a psychedelic sacrament as well. So
Wow.
it kind of ties in not only ancient indigenous use, but also modern use by people in the Mideast, Asia, and Europe.
Wow. So
Yeah,
Immortality Key and Road to Eleusis.
that's right.
I'll put those in the show notes, so if anybody wants to check those out. That's interesting. All right. So, biggest misconception about psychedelics.
I would say that they're addictive and that they're habit forming. Like
Yeah,
it's
that makes sense.
very low risk of addiction with psychedelics.
A habit that keeps you grounded.
Meditation. So
Yay!
yay! Yeah,
Ding, ding, ding. You win Jenny Prize.
So I meditated with Jenny, of course, and I did a Vipassana meditation retreat back in 2022, and that was with my psychedelic experiences, and that was up there as well. My Vipassana experience was one of the most impactful things that I ever did. One of the hardest, but one of the best things I've ever done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Music you turn to when you need clarity.
Oh man, I'm gonna say silence. Like I'm weird. Like when I need clarity, I need silence.
Okay.
So I look for silence when I need clarity.
Makes sense. Well, this could be back to meditation, but we'll see. A daily practice you swear by.
Yeah, I meditate, and I've been cold plunging in our pool since like Halloween, and it's really cold right now. So I did this morning again, and I hate it, but I love it at the same time. I like it when I hit the water, and I hate the first 30 seconds, but then I gut it out. I do 3 minutes, and then I feel awesome afterwards. And it helped my allergies a lot with cedar pollen. Cedar pollen's really horrible in Austin, and I swear it's helped with my allergies this allergy season. So
That's awesome. Hopeful or realistic? Which one wins?
hopeful. Yeah.
Yes.
Not anymore. I'm whatever
I'm
happens.
so glad you said that. I'm surrounded by realists, but hopeful's my answer.
Yeah, it's the only choice to have right now.
Yep.
Okay. Podcasts or music when you're driving?
Yeah, podcasts. Typically. Yeah. I also listen to Michael Beckwith at Agape International Church.
Oh,
He's
okay.
like, I was listening to him this morning. So he's like my pastor, my minister. So I like to listen to Michael Beckwith.
Yes.
Okay, bonus question. Beach or mountains?
Mountains. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not huge beach person. I'd rather go to the mountains. I like the wilderness. I like the woods. I like being in the woods a lot.
Hmm. I want to say a little fun fact about Nate, if I can.
Yes,
I think Nate
yes.
probably knows what he's gonna, maybe what I'm gonna say, but he has a gnome garden. What would you call it? A gnome garden still?
Yeah, Gnome Village. We call it the Gnome
Gnome.
Village.
He has a gnome village in his backyard that he created. It is the coolest thing ever, and I know he keeps working on it and it keeps evolving. But he took Dave and I, my husband and I, on a tour of his little gnome village. It is the
Wait, that is
cutest thing.
so cool.
Yeah, Nate is definitely, I think he was a gnome in a previous life.
Oh my gosh. My husband has a huge garden and we have one gnome in it. And we named him Henry. And there's a solar light that shines on him at night. And it's like, when we put that in, and the first night that we were like, it was like the most exciting. We like loved this gnome Henry. It made the garden so magical. One gnome.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They do.
What is your thing with gnomes? Do you have anything, or you just feel like some pull towards them?
So we had a storm that came through in it must have been like 2018, 2019. And we had this little cave, little like half cave area, limestone cave. And I had cleared this whole area out and we had this canopy of trees. And the storm came through and snapped over one of the trees. And I was real upset about it. But then there was a stump that was left. And so it's this stump that's right next to this cave. And I was looking at it and I'm like, I'm going to do something with that stump. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And I was watching CBS Sunday Morning and they did a highlight on an artist in Atlanta that did these tiny doors Atlanta. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
doors she did was in a stump of a tree. And I saw that and I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn that stump into a gnome tree. And so it was the storm that created that stump. And then COVID hit. And I still remember Mindy was like standing above me and I had a chainsaw and I was like carving a little roof line for the gnome tree. And she said, "What are you doing again?" And I'm building a gnome house. And then, yeah, COVID, I was a drug rep at the time. So I was spending like 5 to 6 hours a day more in my car. And then I was home, and so I would make my virtual calls and then I would pop down to my gnome village. And that was like my therapy. And then it got bigger. We added pixies and there's a fairy tree and there's a castle and there's troll caves. It's a whole thing. It's like an entire kingdom now.
It's
Oh my
awesome.
gosh, I love it. That's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. It's
Wow.
fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
creators, It's like that's one thing that I learned in COVID is that that's part of like that's who we are. We're conscious and so we create. And so to have that as a meditation, and that's what happens when you're in the creative process. It's the highest form of meditation because you're you're meditating and doing something at the same time. Because I would literally be down there for hours and like I would just come out of it. And it's like, oh wow. Like all I was doing during that time was I was creating. There weren't any other thoughts going through my head other than, what was going on in my weird little world.
That's so awesome. It was so important to have that,
It is. It's an outlet that I can always. It's like getting to be that time of year. It goes kind of in winter, and then
Sure.
come spring, I go down there and I spruce everything up and do my repairs.
I love it. I need another tour of your update next time I'm in Texas. I need to
Yeah.
get it down there.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
Come
so
out,
fun.
take a look, Susie. Next time you're in town, we'll give you a tour of the gnomes.
That sounds
Yep.
so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I need to make a trip to Texas with Jenny to come and like see everyone who's been, visiting
Hey,
us
we need
here on the
another.
podcast. And now that I know everyone, well, not everyone, now that I know those who have, been guests on the podcast much better than just a brief hello, nice to meet you, it would be fun to connect with everyone. Yeah. Yeah, super cool. Well, Nate, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. And for everyone listening, this is Nate's first podcast. We feel very honored because he is a plethora of valuable information for everyone with this psychedelic treatment. And I'm very excited for your future, and it looks extremely bright.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I was
Yeah.
appreciate being on. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Do you
Made
have
it really easy.
any last words for our listeners today?
No, not at all. Except for integration. When you find somebody like Jenny, like you talked about like how we're gonna do it right. You find really good people, right? That's what's gonna make this happen. Is just like really good people that really care about each other, and that's what we need right now. We just need to really lean and care for one another. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yes,
Let's do
Nate.
it.
I love this. Jenny, any last words for our listeners today?
I really want to say that it's very important to trust yourself, follow your heart, follow your passion. If you're feeling called to this kind of medicine in any kind of way, please be sure that you do it safely, you find the right resources, you take care of yourself before and after and all the things in between, because it is a journey. It isn't for everyone, and you really need to make sure that you do it safely and mindfully. So I am honored, as I've said earlier, to be a part of Nate's journey in even the smallest of ways, and to see him grow and blossom in this venture and this new way of our future. Really, I think it's a big part of our future in this higher age that we have entered into, and we are evolving in big ways. And it is really a lot about consciousness, and we understand that now more and more. And so to have an incredible soul like Nate being on the front lines of this is a blessing for all of us. So thank you, Nate. I
Yes.
adore you, as you know, and I'm so, so, so grateful that you're in this space that you are with the psychedelics.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
You were an amazing navigator along the way. So I owe a lot to you. So appreciate you. Love you.
Love you too.
And to all of our listeners, we love you so much. We're so grateful for you, as we say every week. Please like, subscribe, and follow us. Share us with your friends and neighbors and your family. And we will see you all next week.
All is well.
All right. Is that a wrap?
So we're at.
That's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Sister Sessions podcast. If you found inspiration in today's conversation, we'd love it if you shared the episode with your besties, family, or even your favorite neighbors. We'll be back next time with more to share, but until then, remember, meditation is the key to unlocking your inner peace. All is well, friends. See you soon.